Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Good morning and welcome to the Motivated Martial Artist podcast with me, Jackson White.
And Gavin Cook.
And this morning we've got a martial artist who not only trains in Taekwondo but also in Karate, and is also the author of Old School Perspectives on Taekwondo, Ciaran McDonald. Morning, Ciaran.
Hello.
Morning.
Morning.
Thanks for coming in today, Ciaran.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so over to you then, Gavin, if you want to start off with the first question.
Okay then, Ciaran, so I suppose just let obviously ourselves and our audience know about your sort of earlier years, really, how you started Taekwondo and what your childhood was like and all that sort of good stuff.
Right, okay, so aspect subject. My childhood was good, I suppose. I'm an Irish descendant. My mum and dad are both Irish, and they came over here in the 60s as poor migrants. I lived in a part of Reading. I grew up in Reading. I lived in a part of Reading where migrants at my school, it was a small school, there were about 150 people in it, but the migrants in it were made up the large majority of it, so sort of white English people were a very small minority. So it was kind of like a multicultural rainbow of people, you know, Pakistanis, Indians, Irish, French, Spanish, Sri Lankans, Jamaicans. It was really good. It was a really nice introduction to education and the world, really.
Okay. And what sort of age were you when you first got introduced to martial arts?
I think it was about 9 or 10 when I first did it, because I'm of an age now. I was born in 1972, so I grew up in the era of the Hong Kong film industry. We were kids, you know, we were all leaping around going, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Wanting to be Bruce Lee.
Yeah, I think we've all done that over our time, haven't we? I used to hide in my garage and put my punch bag up and do Bruce Lee style shouts as I was punching it.
With the extra high pitched voice, Gavin.
Yeah, I think my mum got fed up of me doing that around the house, and she took me down to the local community centre, which turned out to be a blind centre.
Okay.
And enrolled me in the first martial art that she found. I mean, in those days, people didn't really know what martial arts were, and that there were, in fact, different martial arts. So she just enrolled me in the first one she found.
Presumably that was Taekwondo, was it?
No, it wasn't Taekwondo, actually. It was Shotokan Karate. But to be fair to a young kid, you know, when you're walking up and down the hall, blocking and shouting, they don't look that dissimilar. But I shouldn't say that. That's heresy. But you know, one comes from the other, so they bear a striking resemblance to each other. But anyway, you know, I did that. That was good. I learnt, you know, one of the things that stuck out in my head, that I got taught how to escape from a headlock when I was a child.
Okay.
And, you know, and that was pretty useful because I wasn't a very big kid, and you're getting in headlocks quite a lot. You know, you got lots of bullies that grab you in the playground and give you a Popeye or whatever. So that turned out to be one of the most useful pieces of self-defense I've ever been taught, because you get to use it a lot. But yeah, that was my first introduction to karate. So I did that for a while, but you know, like most kids, I sort of lacked the motivation to carry it on for any real length of time. So I sort of dropped out and then dropped back in later on in life.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? 'Cause I know we've had quite a lot of guests on the podcast now, and it's similar sort of stories, certainly from people that, you know, I mean, obviously I was born in 1974, and I started at probably a similar sort of age to you, that it's not like it is today where there was like specific children's syllabuses and things like that. You just joined a school and it was predominantly adults in there, and as a kid you just had to get on and follow what everyone else was doing.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. They were just teaching kids adult stuff in an adult way. But yeah, but you know, it was good. It was good. You got an introduction to the culture of it in those days, because the culture of martial arts in those days was a lot less touchy-feely, and everybody was a lot of bravado, and you know.
We've done some past podcasts, and like I said, I started in 1978, and you know, I'd go as far as to say it was quite brutal, that some of the teaching methodologies, you know, that were being implemented, and certainly something you couldn't implement today. So it's no wonder that children at that time lost motivation and lost interest. And if it wasn't for the fact that my father run the Taekwondo school that I went to, I would have given up years ago. I really would have. Yeah, things have changed today. Pleased to say, martial arts are designed now, I think, to cater for everybody, and in particular children.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the mistake a lot of people, because my background is as an educationalist. Okay. So before I became a full-time martial arts instructor, I was a teacher, and I've got a number of academic qualifications in education. And it's shocking how many of the martial arts schools, the old school ones that you see still, have a poor understanding of what people need to learn.
Yes.
So shouting at people, humiliating them, and making them feel uncomfortable doesn't help you learn. In fact, it does the opposite. It creates what's called an affective barrier to learning. So you feel negative about the whole experience, you don't associate with it, and you find it difficult to take in new information because you're frightened all the time. So I think that one of the radical changes in martial arts is that we've begun to understand that shouting at people and humiliating them is the best way to get good students.
But that's how it used to be, wasn't it? That's how it used to be. If you messed your pattern up, it was like, "Oi, do it again!" in front of everybody, and then 50 press-ups on your knuckles straight after, or something like that.
I mean, they're like there were positives to that way of doing stuff, because obviously you became indoctrinated into the culture, and you became sort of more militaristic and soldier-like. And if that's what you wanted to get out of it, then because in the early days of martial arts, that's exactly what people wanted. When they first started Taekwondo, they weren't trying to teach people to become world champions. They were trying to teach people to be fit, healthy recruits for the army, right?
Yeah. No,
and
absolutely.
So in karate, it's the same history of karate. When they first introduced it into Okinawa, not into Okinawa, when they first introduced it to Japan, they were introducing it to the university systems to produce recruits for the army.
Right, okay.
So that culture comes to us, from, there's a long history of wanting to produce fit, young, healthy, compliant people.
No, and you can see that from some of the general teachings. So when did you get involved in Taekwondo then, Ciaran?
When I got back into martial arts in my early 20s, and I experimented with a lot of different martial arts, predominantly jiu-jitsu and aikido, and I liked them. There weren't as many high kicks, and it wasn't what Bruce Lee was doing, and I still had that in me somewhere that I wanted to fly around the room doing flying kicks. And that's the beauty of Taekwondo. Our martial art is, without a doubt, we are the world leaders in kicking stuff.
Yeah.
So once I found it, I felt like I was at home. So I enrolled in an ITF-style Taekwondo school. No, actually, it wasn't. It was a WTF school, actually, or WT, as they want to call themselves these days.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a brutal school as well. It was run by two Indian guys of Indian origin, but they came from Malaysia. And I'll never forget, we were all stood up like soldiers in silence while he walked up and down. It wasn't a big fella either. I mean, he must be like 5'6" or something, a very slight build. And there was a little 7-year-old kid stood next to me, or 8-year-old kid. And I just turned around and heard this whoosh like that. And the instructor just slapped the kid across the face for not standing still.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? This is in the 90s as well. So I looked at him and I thought, I said to him, "Can you do that?" And he said, "Yeah, parents signed a waiver."
I think that's where we're going wrong, Gavin. We need to get some waivers.
Right, that's it. I'm going to get down the printers.
But you get. The beauty is that the WT or WTF training is that you get pretty good at kicking quite quickly. I mean, my first lesson, we walked in the hall and they were teaching us tornado kicks straight away. There wasn't like a staged syllabus where, we'll teach you a front snap kick and move on to a turny kick. It was like, no. Tornado kicks, day one. Straight
in. The thing is, it can be quite effective sometimes, because I think sometimes, as an instructor, you sometimes take a little bit too long to introduce some of these kicks. You focus on the core and the basics and your front kicks and your turn kicks. And then all of a sudden, a year or so down the line, you're asking them to do kicks. And, I've never done that. I'm like, have we never tried that? Where some kids, especially athletic, people, they take to these kicks really easy, don't they?
Very, very much so. In fact, most children, if you can teach them how to do a flying kick in half an hour, and you can get, a whole school full of white belts doing flying kicks in half an hour. It's sort of a natural thing for them to do. They love it.
Yeah, one of the things I try and do in my schools is get that balance of traditional basics to try and get those foundations solid, and then the 360s, the pad work, some of the more fun and flamboyant things that people see and really want to achieve themselves. But of course, you've got to get that basics right as well, because that's the foundation. So it can often be a struggle to get that right balance.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, also the nature of teaching Taekwondo is that you've got such a short period of time to teach. I mean, like, kids only come for like 1 or 2 sessions a week, most of them. And if your lessons are an hour or an hour and a half long, you've got a lot of stuff to squeeze into that. So
yeah, we find that more and more.
Spinning plates, isn't it?
Most definitely. So in your own martial arts career, did you get involved in any of the competition side?
Yeah, I used to compete quite regularly, and I enjoyed that. I had mixed success. I won quite a few medals. But I used to do patterns and sparring and breaking.
Okay.
I was okay at breaking. I was quite good at the sparring, but I was atrocious at the patterns. I don't think I ever won a medal in patterns.
Why do you think that is, Ciaran?
I don't know. Maybe I got like a different idea of what I look like in reality. Maybe those two ideas are like taking different paths.
Yeah, in your mind you think you're Bruce Lee, but in the reality you're Auntie Mabel.
Well, you're in similar company. Actually, I won my first patterns medal the other week, and I needed the aid of my daughter to do a mixed pattern at a local competition. And I've been training nearly 30 years, so yeah, it's not an exclusive group by any means.
No, I mean, I used to just do the patterns because you get that initial... You always do patterns in a competition before you do the sparring, or you usually do anyway. And then you get that initial shot of adrenaline.
Absolutely.
So you get the feeling for it. And then once you've dealt with that, when you go back on, you do the sparring again later, you've already experienced the adrenaline, dealt with it, and so it's not a fresh experience again. So that's the reason why I always did it that way.
It's like having your first round, isn't it? It's like having the first round of sparring.
You'd be surprised.
Exactly.
You'd be surprised that all of the guests that we've had that are international, quality fighters that we've interviewed, 95% of them actually hate doing their patterns. They'd prefer to do anything than do their patterns. It's a common theme.
I'm a big believer that patterns are things that you should be doing on your own, for your own, kind of like a meditative thing, because they have a certain quality, meditative quality, introspective quality, that you don't get by doing competitions. But by doing it on your own in a field, I don't know, when the sun comes up or something like that, then they have a kind of magic quality to them. So I'm a big believer in that. And also, when I do them that way, no one can see my patterns.
and I think also it's the muscle memory that patterns create, isn't it? Ultimately, I think that's that's the big thing. And obviously, it's something that I try to get over to my club, is when you're doing your patterns over and over and over again, you don't realise the sort of the movements and the muscle memory that you're building up can become then an instinct in the event of like a fight and flight type situation.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's predicated on you understanding what you're actually doing. Whereas a lot of people don't fully understand what they're doing, so it's just a form of dance. If you don't understand it.
Just leading on from that, then. So we've had a look at your book, Old School Perspectives of Taekwondo. What motivated you to start putting your pen to paper and start trying to put some explanation to some of the moves that a lot of people don't know what they're doing and what they're for? What drove you to do that?
Well, firstly, I can tell you in a small anecdote. One of the most amazing days of my life ever, but also one of the saddest, was when I got my first degree in Taekwondo. And that's because I'd worked so hard to get it, I'd achieved it, I was elated to get it, but I was under the mistaken impression that when I got my black belt, all the secrets of Taekwondo were going to be revealed to me.
Okay, yeah.
And they were.
Yeah.
And I kept waiting for someone to tell me what all this stuff meant in the patterns. And I found that nobody really understood it. And the explanations were given in the encyclopedia. They're very surface level. And most of them, you've got like 150 different ways to block a straight punch and a straight kick. But there aren't any things to get you out of a headlock or get you out of a bear hug, or guy drags you to the floor, what you're going to do. Guys pulling your hair, what you're going to do. So all the things, all the types of violent attacks that you can encounter, if you're going to have a martial art that teaches self-defense, you need to be able to deal with those. So my feeling was that Taekwondo does deal with those. And in fact, my research has proved that it does, that it deals with them very well. But the problem is they're all hidden in some sort of code within the patterns. So after achieving black belt and finding out that really it's kind of an open secret that people don't fully understand what the patterns really mean, and no one really understands all the applications. I mean, not even General Che understood the applications. So once I understood this, it was because I have kind of an inquiring, critical mind, and I couldn't just accept that no one knew, so I had to find out what they were. So I spent the next 10 years travelling around, studying various different martial arts, trying to find out what the answers were. And I quite quickly realised that because Taekwondo is a modern take on these patterns, the answers aren't in Taekwondo. Okay. So if you want to find out what the patterns mean, you have to go back to the source. So the patterns that we study are really chopped up bits and glued back together of Shotokan patterns. And many of the Shotokan patterns are in fact chopped up bits and glued back together bits of older karate and kung fu patterns. Okay. So like there's a long history of doing that. So if you want to find the answers, you have to go back to the beginning, what the guys originally were trying to achieve when they created the kata. Okay, so like at the moment we study, in Taekwondo there's 24 patterns. So we've got 3 or 2 sajos, depending on what kind of association you're with. We've got one pattern which we no longer do in ITF style, but some schools hold on to. We've got the Juche Kodang thing. And then there was originally a pattern called Unam or Wunam, which is named after the right-wing dictator Syngman Rhee. So there's 26 patterns and a load of sajos, right?
Okay, yeah.
And we got similar thing is true in other forms of karate and other forms of Taekwondo. They've got a big collection of patterns. But in the old days, when you were a master, you would only know maybe 2 or 3 kata. That would be it. And they would represent your fighting system. So all the things that you wanted to put into a fighting system but couldn't record because you didn't have a DVD player or YouTube, you would put into a kata, and that would be the way of remembering them.
Ah, right, okay.
But so what happened was when we started, when Shotokan started, when karate started, and they lost all the application practices, and they introduced it to the schools. They removed all the killer techniques because you couldn't teach those kids, and the way of learning karate became kata. So people were studying kata, and just doing repetitions of it over and over and over again. But what happens is when you go up the dan grades or go up the Q grades or cup grades in Taekwondo, you need another kata. So they were adding more kata on. And they quite quickly ran out of kata, so they went to see the guy that curated most of the Okinawan kata, a guy called Mabuni Kenwa, and he would teach the Funakoshi or Funakoshi's son a kata. He would bring it back, then they would add it to their syllabus. So karate's just got loads of crazy kata, but a lot of them are repeats. There's an awful lot of repetition in it. But one of the clever things that General Che did was when he chopped up the Shotokan kata and put them back together again, he took out an awful lot of the repetition. So we end up with a system that progresses without so much repetition. So as if you look at Shotokan kata, they've got like 4 or 5 kata that are almost identical, which consist of low block and reverse punch.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't have that. We have new moves in each kata, in each pattern. There's a progression. I mean, he did a very good job of putting it all together.
And there's it gets more of a depth as well as the patterns go up. There's a lot more depth to each pattern, isn't there, as well?
There is, yeah, and and if you ignore the politics of the Juche Kodang thing, the Dan grade patterns get progressively more difficult until you get to Juche, which pretty much is the most difficult one. You can argue whether that Mung Mu or that one is the most difficult, but Juche is a pretty physical pattern.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to starting Moon Moo, I must admit. not unless I can keep the kicks knee height.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've recently been unsuccessful in my pre-grading for 4th dan, so I've got a little time before I have to do Mung Mu.
Yeah, certainly. They are more challenging. I'm a fourth dan now. I'm starting to learn the patterns for the fifth dan, and it really does test your strength and flexibility and agility, and more importantly, at my ripe old age of 45, memory.
Yeah, I'm hoping I get there before I make 50.
Yeah,
Which is, I'm quite happy with my flexibility at the moment, but it's going to tail off, I guess, when I get to my 50s.
Yeah, everything starts tailing off once you start getting to that age. So how long did it take you to research the book?
It took 10 years. Took 10 years. I bought loads. The first thing I did is I went out and bought all the books on applications and stuff that I found, and a lot of books on pressure points, and studied all those. And some of them had, it's like the analogy of blind men touching an elephant. I don't know if you've heard that. You get three blind men, they're grabbing a different piece of the elephant. One says, "Oh, the elephant's long and and malleable because he's touching the trunk." The other one says, "Oh, it's huge. He's touching the flank," and the other one's got the tail. Oh, it's stinky. So so you got like people had a little piece of the puzzle. They've all got a little piece of the puzzle, but they haven't got an overall picture of it. So I found that through my experience of classical jiu-jitsu, I learned more of the grappling techniques that you find in the patterns by studying classical jiu-jitsu than anything else. And but again, I was doing the same thing. I was just finding a little piece of the puzzle, putting it together with another little bit over here. Didn't necessarily make sense. But what I found was there was a guy that had done this journey in karate before me, because it was in the same situation. It was reduced to a block, kick, punch art, and so no one really knew what any of the applications were. But when karate was originally designed in Okinawa, it wasn't a block, kick, punch art. It was a grappling art. It was based on kung fu, and it used a part of kung fu called chi na, which is a way of manipulating joints and seizing tissue and separating it from bone. So there was a lot of that in it, but because it got reduced to a kick, block, punch art, that disappeared. So and that is really the key to understanding it. So and jiu-jitsu is based on chi na. So if you understand jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of similarities with chi na, and you'll see a lot of the moves in the patterns. But so the guy that had done this before me in karate was a guy called Patrick McCarthy.
Okay.
He's a ninth dan in karate. And he is, he's a staggeringly important figure in karate and in martial arts in general. He speaks a number of different languages, including Japanese. He translated works from the old masters. And, I mean, the reason that's important is because the history of karate is the history of Taekwondo, right? Taekwondo didn't start in 1955. There was a long history of influence before that.
Sure.
So, and all that history belongs to us. That's the thrust of my book, is all the influence prior to 1955. It belongs to us. It's our history. It's our culture. There are applications, and a lot of people won't look back past that because they've inherited this distrust and dislike of the Japanese, and so there's a knee-jerk reaction to anything karate-based. And you probably found this yourself, that Taekwondo instructors quite a lot of the time fear karate more than they fear MMA or fear judo or fear anything like that. But
yeah.
It's like a false dichotomy that you set up, because really we came out of karate, so the karate history belongs to us. We just need to reclaim it.
Oh, okay.
Did you find so when you were sort of researching this book? Did you take any trips over to Korea and over to Japan?
I've been over to Korea. Yeah, I trained in Korea for a bit, and that was good. But the south of Korea is mostly WT, or WTF as it was then. So I enjoyed my time over there, but it didn't really help me with the applications. And also the Okinawan karate has changed radically as well. So what happened was, when it went over to Japan, it changed the form because it went into the schools. But it became so popular in that form that when it fed back into Okinawa and changed the way that the Okinawans did their karate. So all the application stuff that I was looking for no longer exists in Okinawa in that form. But luckily I was able to find this historian fella, Patrick McCarthy, and he'd spent his entire adult life categorising drills and finding them in other arts and bringing them back into karate. So then I was able to look at the similarities between karate and Taekwondo and just draw out of that the bits that we need to reinvigorate our art. Because, you know, it's my mission to bring back all the self-defense and lost bits of Taekwondo from the patterns and help instructors by creating interactive drills and ways of teaching that. So that's my mission at the moment, producing materials to help people with that.
Well, that's certainly a mission and a half, isn't it? For sure. I mean, I think the thing is as well. Obviously, every instructor, whether it's karate or taekwondo, they all have their own opinions as well, don't they? Which again, and things that they're based on from their own experience.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so what motivated you 10 years ago then to start digging this out, Ciaran, and getting it laid down?
The kind of person I am is a person that questions everything. My mum taught me from a very early age to question the given rather than just accept stuff. And although that's not a fashionable trait in traditional martial arts, because we come from a hierarchical system where it's seen as disloyal if you question the word of your instructor or you question their knowledge base. So you've got to be respectful when you do it, but still at the same time, if someone sells you a pup, you don't need to accept it. You know, that's not. We've come from you and I come from a Western culture of post-Enlightenment thinking, which means that we establish knowledge by questioning things and trying to find answers, and
most definitely
either rationalising or experimenting. So that's because that's the sort of person I am. I couldn't accept the fact that we have 150 blocks to block a straight punch. I thought, why would you design something like that? There must be something else in it somewhere. I've got to find that thing. So I think I put a few noses out of joint over the years trying to do so, but yeah, that's the mission I'm on.
So 10 years into the book, you're obviously, it's now published. How is it being received in the martial arts world?
I think I've only had positive responses so far. But, you know, that's kind of self-selecting. I suppose I would have, because only the people who wanted to find out the answers have bought my book. You know what I mean? So people with an interest in what I've written are the ones who are buying my book. So people who are not interested and would say negative things about it probably haven't bought it. So it's a bit difficult to say, really, without being biased, to be objective about it. Everybody who's read it said good things about it so far. But, you know, that's what I'm looking for. You know?
Absolutely. So what's next for you then, Ciaran?
The next thing I'm doing at the moment, I've designed an online course on blocking. So what I've done is I've taken the various different blocks that we currently use against straight punches in set sparring, and I've found them in little segments of the patterns where they're put together with 2 or 3 moves, and those are little self-defense sequences like front snap kick double punch or wedging block front snap kick double punch. That's a sequence that comes from a karate pattern called Gion, and that's a very useful self-defense template, you know. Mm-hmm. So what I've done is I've taken those, I've created little 2-person interactive flow drills. So one of the problems with teaching self-defense is you do your kicking, your pads, your sparring, and then usually at the end of a lesson people say, right, grab my wrist, this is how you get out of that, do that 10 times, and then people end up staring into space because it's not a very interesting thing to do. But if you want to get people doing repetitions of the same thing over and over and over again, you've got to find a way of making it a bit more active and a bit more interactive and a bit more interesting. So that's the nature of flow drills, is that you get a lot of repetition in your activity, but also instead of just one person doing another, I then layer it up. So you'll grab my wrist, I'll show you how to I'll get out of it and do something to you, but I'll give you a counter to what I'm doing, so that then you've got something to do, and then either another move or it will feed us back into the beginning where we're grabbing wrists again. Okay. Round. So that's basically what I'm doing. I'm creating this online course full of flow drills, and and blocking to help people get the most out of their Taekwondo.
Okay, no, it sounds really, really interesting. We're coming towards the end of the session now. Something we always ask our interviewees. We've already spoke about what motivates you. What piece of advice would you give to your younger self, given what you know now in life?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the same person I am now, so I've got a much more level head than I had in the old days. I think, one of the benefits I got out of studying martial arts was it gives you it levels you as a sort of person, because I was quite kind of a fiery character in my younger days. And once you get into the martial arts, then you have to sort of obey by the rules, respect the culture, turn up on time, iron your uniform, do all those things. And you don't notice it, but it makes you a better person. And I feel, if I were to tell myself, my younger self, I'd just say stick with it, because what you're getting out of it, you believe you're just getting to learn how to kick and punch people, but there's a whole lot of other stuff you're getting out of it you don't fully understand.
Sure.
And then later on in life you'll be able to get that,
Yeah, and that's exactly what what we sort of say to our students as well. I mean, they originally turn up and the kids might want to come into, or the adults, and they think they're just kick punching and blocking, but it's the hidden stuff, isn't it? It's the subliminal stuff, the stuff they're not seeing that's sinking in, the discipline, the respect, the courtesy, and all those hidden things that are going in.
Yeah, I mean, quite often as an instructor, people come to me and they say that, my child has just done their GCSEs and we'd like to thank you because we don't believe they'd have been able to do their GCSEs without you. And in the early days, I'm like, what? I'm teaching people how to kick and punch.
Yeah.
What the hell's that got to do with GCSEs? But you're right. It's the fact that they're able to concentrate on stuff and stick with stuff and have goals and see them through and all those things, all those positives out of it.
Yeah, no, fantastic. But it's been really insightful, Ciaran. And again, thanks very much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been really interesting insight to get a perspective from not just settling for the norm and what's been told to you, but actually going right back in history and really digging around and scratching around to come out with some answers that people might necessarily like to hear, which I'm sure will be the case, but also some people may need to hear that as well.
That's good. I hope you enjoyed the book.
No, yeah, fantastic. I mean, I've just been away, so I've not had a chance to read all of it yet, but I certainly will be.
Fantastic, yeah. I mean, if anybody wants to get hold of a copy of this book, you can get it on my website, or you can get it off Amazon.
Okay, so it's on Amazon then, Ciaran. Is it available on? I don't suppose it'd be available on Kindle format because it's no pictures, is it?
No.
It will actually. It'll be available on Kindle next week.
Oh, really?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
See, I'm behind the times. You see, I only listen to audiobooks.
Well, if you've ever heard my reading, it'd be a stretch to get me on an audio.
Fantastic, Ciaran. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and our Facebook group, The Motivated Martial Artist Podcast.
Or check us out on Instagram, The Motivated Martial Artists,
where you'll see much more content and early insight into some of the interviews and some of the guests and some of the conversations around the things that we're discussing. Hope to see you all next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.